Clark Pest Control of Stockton. I started there after being in pest control for about 16 years in 2005, February 2005. During that time I started, by the end of 2005, I started to experience some respiratory problems that were similar to allergies and asthma. And after a certain amount of time, I started to get to the point where I couldn't breathe anymore. And I went to the doctor, Kaiser Permanente. Do you want me to elaborate on it? And so when I went to the workers' comp doctor for Kaiser Permanente, called Kaiser Occupational Health in Milpitas, they told me that Clark had given me a glorified dust mask, not a respirator. That's what the doctor put on the report. And he recommended that I have a chemical cartridge respirator. And then I went back and I told Clark, and they gave me one for a whole day and had me continue work with the regular respirator. During that time, I hired an attorney, and he told me that I should have a class action against Clark, that I should...
They had not provided protection, health and safety protection for the workers. Well, how did you find that out? I mean, what was going on?
At first I went to OSHA, and I talked to OSHA, and they told me that the Clark was supposed to provide me a different respirator after 8 hours of use every single day, because I worked 14 hours some days. And later I found out that OSHA didn't, the man for OSHA didn't tell me the truth. The respirator was not for pest control use at all. And when I brought in my training...
Who told you that?
His name, I believe his name is Juan Calderon. I know the last name is Calderon. He's from Fremont, OSHA. He's now in charge of Oakland, OSHA. And I brought in my training documents for Clark, and he read the respiratory policy, and he started laughing. And he literally put his head on the table and just laughed hysterically. And he said, "This is a document that for 10 years, Clark does not even know who governs respiratory protection in their own state, and they're the largest pest control company in their state, and they do in-house training. They thought OSHA was the one that regulated respirators when it was NIOSH." And so he laughed. Then he did an inspection, and he found out that he made sure that he only did the inspection for 2008 to 2009, when I told him in advance that I worked there from 2005 to 2006. But what part would you like me to...
So this company was aware that they didn't even know what protection you were required to have for pesticide work?
Yes, they were actually lying to the state about the respiratory protection. On their training documents that they give every year, they were listing that they were using a 20M respirator as their primary respirator, and that this Moldex 2840 R95 respirator was their secondary respirator. But the other respirator that they gave was actually something they only gave maybe once a month or once every 2-3 weeks. It wasn't even something that could be even put on the form as a secondary respirator, let alone the primary one.
If you had had this respirator, would you have gotten sick?
No. I'd been in pest control for 16 years, and every single company I worked for was competent. And Clark Pest Control was the only company that didn't provide me the proper respiratory protection. And they never took any responsibility for this.
And what did Cal-OSHA do about these violations of the law as far as protection of workers in the pesticide industry?
Absolutely nothing. They wrote on the form that from 2008 to 2009, Clark Pest Control did nothing wrong, even though they knew I worked there from 2005 to 2007. And they refused to let me have my report that I originally wrote to them. They refused to let me have it. So, and then the last time I went there, the OSHA man had security escort me out of the building because I was yelling at him for not allowing me the copy of my own original report. So
Who do you think Cal-OSHA represents?
oh, definitely the corporations. They're nothing but a puppet for the corporations. They do nothing for injured workers. So
You also went to the district attorney to file workers' comp fraud charges against Clark Pest. What happened there?
I went to San Jose district attorney's office, and they did, the district attorney officer sat me down, and I explained to them all the different things of fraud that they did. It was something like 60 different things that they had done, not just one. And they didn't even file a report. I gave them a copy of a book I wrote that was 400 pages that had documents entitled in it, and they never called me back, would never return my phone calls. I called him probably 10-15 times, and he never returned my phone calls once. So that's pretty much what their answer to fraud against Clark Pest Control.
And now your personal situation, you're still fighting to get proper health care, and your records were falsified, and you're basically homeless and surviving on general assistance. What's happened to you as far as your rights, worker rights, and health and safety rights?
They basically took it away from me. I tried to apply for Social Security. I was told by Kaiser put that I was treated for colon and lung cancer. Then when I told the workers' comp attorney named Jerry Wells, within 2 days Kaiser went and removed the entire file showing that they treated me for colon and lung cancer, and they refused to give me any kind of Social Security. And in fact, 4 years of applying, they have not gotten the right medical records on at least during the entire 4 years. Even though I've written it on the forms, they still get the wrong ones and solicit the wrong doctors and hospitals for these records. So I've only had 18 records on 2 denials that were actually relevant to my case.
And so what you're saying is that Kaiser, who was supposed to be responsible for your health care, has conspired with Clark Pesticides to prevent you from really getting proper treatment and covering up their liability?
Absolutely. In fact, when I was first injured, they did a CT scan on me, and it showed a large tumor in the transverse colon, and Kaiser put down that it's within normal limits, even though this tumor was in the colon and causing me bowel obstructions. And then they sent me to do a spirometry test, the pulmonologist, and it showed a moderate obstructive defect. And one doctor at Kaiser had already told me I had lung cancer. So the moderate obstructive defect was just confirmation that I had lung cancer. So 13 days later, Kaiser changed the report, these 2 doctors for nothing, and they put down that I had a mild restriction. And then I received a letter from this pulmonologist named Edith Andrea Glassberg to give to the QME pulmonary doctor, and it said that Brian's CT scan was normal and that his slightly mild asthma was most likely due to his obesity problem. And then I tried to go, I was referred by the original Kaiser occupational health doctor named Dr. Ramon Garcia. He referred me to the Kaiser occupational health doctor in San Francisco, Linda Morse, who is a chemical exposure at work doctor, a specialist. I set 3 appointments up with her and confirmed them, and every time I made it there, she wasn't there to have the appointment. And then I was given some lady that had no expertise in that field, and she just basically gave me the runaround. So I drove 50 miles one way, took the day, the half day to drive there. I drove early because of traffic. They're on Van Ness, and then they just went and canceled on me. But when I received that letter to the from Dr. Edith Andrea Glassberg, I gave it to the qualified medical evaluator for pulmonary like they told me, and the insurance adjuster. And the qualified medical evaluator, his name was Dr. Ira Fishman. He refused to look at the CT scan that showed the tumor. Instead, he went by the report and the letter, and he refused to accept that Kaiser changed my spirometry tests, even though there was evidence. And before the CT scan was done, there was an X-ray that showed lung cancer in the fine vesicular reticulations, is what they were referring to as my lung cancer. He refused to get that medical file or accept that to put it into his report. And when he made a report, it was completely to cover up my lung and colon cancer.
Now, Christine Baker is director of the Department of Industrial Relations. They are supposed to be oversight of the workers' comp situation. It sounds like the qualified medical examiner, these people are basically committing workers' comp fraud. They're ignoring medical information in order to limit liability of companies. Is this your opinion?
Absolutely. It's just, I think that Kaiser Permanente is not just covering up workers' comp, but they're getting with employers, and in order to get their business, they're actually giving them warning signs and flags when an individual just has asthma or any kind of respiratory problems. Because I have a friend that works there, and she's gotten a lot of information for me. So I've written Christine Baker a few letters, and she hasn't responded once. I mean, and I explained to her I've had a trial of fraud with a presiding Judge Oliver Boyer, Judge Howard Levin, and Attorney Jerry Wells, where they would not let me use my CT scans showing the tumor. They would not let me put it on record, nor would they let me put my several other radiology films, even though it says I can do it in the rules. The judge refused to allow me to do it.
They also sent you to a psychiatrist. What was Clark Pesticide trying to do by sending you to a psychiatrist?
Well, what actually happened first was the attorney that I hired, I went to his office in Capitola. His name was Bruce Baum, and he had me fill out the paperwork showing that I hired him. Then for 2 months he didn't get back to me, and my claim was denied during that time because he refused to tell the insurance company he was representing me. And then a few months went by, and I called him a total of 18 times. And I didn't know his history of having many malpractice suits against him. And what he did was he called me up one day and he said, "Brian, I lost the paperwork. I had just had back surgery and I moved." Later I would find out he didn't have back surgery, and he had been in the same building that he owns for 20 years. And so he said, "I need to meet you in the San Jose Workers' Comp Appeals Board. I need you to sign 3 new DWC forms, or 2 new ones." And he said, in case, and then I went there and I signed them. I was bothered by the fact that they were blank. But what happened was I signed them anyway. I didn't know this process, and I trusted him, and he really destroyed my trust. So he changed my respiratory claim to a psych and respiratory claim. He opened up a left knee claim that I had in 2005 that I just was cut by walking across one of those lights that light up buildings, and I never even signed the paperwork for workers' comp, but he opened it up anyway. And so during that time they filed a psych claim, and Bruce Baum and this attorney for Clark Pest Control actually sent the psychiatry doctor this case. It's called Lisa Capsalis versus Art Group Ltd, along with all these medical records and files, without even letting me know. And I told him I didn't want this psychiatry claim at all. I didn't want anything to do with this. And I was stuck with it. And it was obvious that Clark was looking to set me up. It was just completely obvious. And they were doing it through my own attorney.
And what is the lesson of this for workers, injured workers in California, the experience you've been through?
The the first lesson is I don't trust attorneys, especially in the workers' comp process. I would treat it in a different manner, and the manner is that I would do everything myself, and I would give the employer nothing that he could use. I mean, you know, I would go to the doctor myself. I would go to other doctors without letting them know until I could get the right reports, and not, you know, have them change things and move things around like they did. It's just been terrible. So
You've discovered that there are many other injured workers who are in similar circumstances?
absolutely. I mean, Clark gave the wrong respirator to 3,000 employees, so Kaiser had to have covered up other cases. I had a friend that he was in the best of shape. His name was Greg Burnett, and next thing you know, he dies of a heart attack. And right now, my cancer has actually affected my heart. So, I mean, I'm sure there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of workers that have suffered even, you know, just like this or even worse. So, yeah, it's horrible. And, you know, it's not just Kaiser, it's other hospitals as well. So.
Okay, thank you.